Welcome to Confessions of a Small Biz Mama, episode 28, Working with Your Kids and Spouse at Home. All right, so now I know that when you originally signed up to be a small business owner, you probably didn't do it with the expectation that everybody was going to be home all the time. And so I wanted to share some tips with you for how to create a working environment, whether you're working for somebody else or you're working for yourself, or maybe you're trying to figure out like, how am I going to set up a business with everybody home all the time? I know this is something that a lot of our bookkeepers struggle with when they start bookkeeper training school. So let's talk about working with your kids and spouse at home. Okay. So I'm going to give you a whole bunch of tips that I think are really, really useful in general, but especially right now. Because like I said, everybody's home. Sometimes you've got multiple parents trying to navigate, where you're going to work in a house that wasn't designed for this, right? And also, maybe some of your support systems aren't available anymore, because of Corona. And so let's kind of go through and look at some tips. So first of all, it is incredibly important that you have a place to work. Okay. Now, that might not be a permanent place to work, right? If you don't have the space in the house to set up a dedicated area, Jeff and I actually share a bedroom that we've converted into an office. And so it's funny because like you see me and you see the window, right? But on the other side of my computer is another desk. And it's Jeff's desk with all of his stuff on it. So, it may not be ideal, but for the type of work that we both do, it works. And so figure out where you want that workplace to be. Now, one thing, think about what is most conducive for your children based on their age. So I'll tell you, so we moved our office upstairs as Eric got a little bit older, but when Eric was really little, what we did is we actually took our family room and converted our family room into the office. And the reason we did that was because it had a really big area in the middle where we could set up this like play area for Eric. And so he could play on the floor while we were working. Now, once he started walking, like all bets were off with that. It didn't really work anymore. And that's why we moved our office upstairs. And we had to, we had to kind of change the way that we watched him. And that's the next tip. But so think about like, is it, can you set up your office in, again, it doesn't have to be permanent, but can you set up a workspace where, your kids are playing? Or if your kids are doing remote school, can you set up your workspace at the dining room table with them so that you're all working together, right? Because I think what causes a lot of the strife and the angst with kids is that they want to be with you. And they want to be near you, right? It gives them a sense of security. And so, it's funny because even like Eric will say, Mama, I don't want you to go work. And it's just, but because he wants to be there with us. And so he's finally starting to get to the age where we can give him something to do and he will allow us to work somewhat, near him. Now, it doesn't always work. Okay. Which is why, okay, we'll talk about the next rule. But one thing I love, and I'm going to put a link to this in the show notes, is there's a desk called the Edge desk. And it's actually like, it's a completely foldable mobile desk that you can move around your house. It's a little pricey. I think I'm going to get one for the motorhome. but you can move it around. And there's like, you can get like, like laptop carts, right? Like the real little ones, you could like put a laptop on and kind of move it around your house. Figure out what would work for you if you need to be able to move it, wherever you need to go. Okay, so you want to have that workspace. Now, the other thing you're going to want to do too is, like, if you do have a job where you're going to need to be speaking, get a headset and get a noise canceling microphone, okay, with a mute button. And so even when I'm on Zoom, like I record these through Zoom, I typically have my mouse like over the mute button. So in case something happens, I can really easily mute. Okay. And so figure out what that is for you. Or I know, like, a lot of headphones, if you tap the right combination, you can mute them really easily. Okay. So think about that as well. Because, here's the thing, I think that, like, I work with moms. Okay. And when I'm picking clients, like, I'm really straightforward. Like, hey, I have a toddler, I will always get your work done on time, but sometimes things happen. Sometimes I don't have babysitting. Sometimes my kid gets sick. Sometimes my husband gets sick. Like, stuff happens. And so when that's the case, my kid comes first, and sometimes my kid's going to bust in on a Zoom call. Like, it's going to happen. I work with people that are okay with that it may not be perfect, but they're okay with that. And so one of the great things about being self-employed is that you get to make those decisions, right? You get to decide who you're going to work with and who you're not going to work with. Okay, so the next thing is divvying up childcare. So you really need to look at your situation and determine what your childcare options are. So for Jeff and I split the day. And so what that means for us is that typically I work in the mornings and Jeff works in the afternoons. And what that allows for me is that on the majority of days when Eric is taking a nap, I get to also work during the nap. Okay. So, and what I'm hoping is, as we continue to simplify things and as we continue to outsource things to our team, that it gets, we're actually able to switch the schedule a little bit. And so I'll take, I'll watch Eric more in the morning, and Jeff will watch him, in the afternoon. And that's just because, like, as Eric gets older, like, I want to be able to do more homeschooling stuff with him. And he's more focused in the morning. So the other thing that you can do is see if you can create a pod. And so a pod is a group of other parents who are in a similar situation, who may be willing to, like, split the day with you, or watch the kids on alternate days. We kind of have a pod set up with my mom. And so she comes over a couple mornings a week to watch Eric so that Jeff can get some more work done. And so that is also an option. But think about what that could look like in your household. I think it's also really important that you establish some ground rules. Okay. Sometimes we don't have enough structure in our own days, let alone in days with our kids. And especially if you have really little kids, having some structure in place. And that structure could be, like what our day kind of looks like is, we wake up, Eric has to stay in bed until the sun comes up. That's the rule. And as we're coming into fall, it's funny because they'll be like, he kind of understands that the days are getting shorter, right? And then it's darker longer, but he doesn't really understand why. So it's kind of funny because he's like, it's not morning yet. And it's like, this used to be morning. Why is it not morning yet? because it's taking longer for the sun to come up. So it's kind of funny, but so we wake up in the morning, Jeff and I shower, we all go downstairs, we have breakfast together. Jeff and Eric will try to play outside, or do like physical play with a little bit of instruction kind of worked in. And then they have, they do that until lunchtime. And then after lunch, mommy and Eric, they go upstairs, they read, we cuddle, and then Eric has quiet time until 3:00. And like that, that's the rule. We actually taught him how, what it looks like on his clock. We put a clock on the wall. Thank you, Anita. If you're in bookkeeper training school, you know who Anita is. And so we have the clock on the wall, and he knows how to read the 3. Okay. And then after that, he plays with mommy and we make dinner. So it's not, we have structure, right? Typically after dinner, we'll go for a walk as a family. And then, it's getting ready for bed. So notice it's not a ton of structure, right? It's not like every single thing is, every single thing is worked out. But, we kind of have themes as part of the days, and we kind of use, meals to kind of anchor our days. I think it's really important to have some schedule. Okay. Because so for example, like for Eric, Eric knows that even if he doesn't take a nap, the afternoon is quiet time. And so he's in his room. His room is a safe place for him to be. He's got books in there. He's got stuffed animals. He has a couple cars, and he knows to play. Now, if your kids have never had quiet time before, you never enforce that, and they're really little, it's going to take time. And even I know when we transitioned Eric to his big kid bed, right? It took time for him to get used to, wait a minute, I have free reign, I can leave the room now. And it took a little bit. Okay. But I think it's really important, especially if you're working or your kid is in remote school, you need to take the time to let them burn some energy, and you need to work that into your schedule. And we need that too, frankly. If you're sitting at your desk all day, you need to burn off some energy. I typically do not sit at my desk for more than 90 minutes at a stretch. I can't. I'll start getting fidgety and I get distracted, and it's because I've got to burn off that energy. So sometimes I'll run downstairs and I'll flip over the laundry and I'll run upstairs. That's 2 flights basically for me to do that from the basement to the 2nd floor. You just have to get out that energy, right? And I'll do some breath work and stuff like that, and I feel so much better. We as humans were not meant to sit for long periods of time, right? And little kids aren't either. That's, I see some of these homeschool schedules or some of these remote school schedules. I'm like, good God, what? I just can't. As a former Board of Ed member and as an educator, I just can't. So make sure you've got those in your schedule to get the kids up and running around a little bit and burn off some energy. Sometimes just put on a song and have a dance party. It doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be anything complicated. And sometimes we just have to let our kids be. We have to stop being helicopter parents. And so that means let them play, let them get dirty. Eric, it's interesting because Eric is, let's see, he is 2 years and 9 months, just about. And he will sit and he'll flip through his books and he'll read his books, or he'll sit and do puzzles quietly, or he'll he will play with things in sensory buckets. He will play with Play-Doh. You know, sometimes he just likes to play with kitchen, you know, implements. So like he likes whisks and bowls and things like that, even if there's nothing in them, just to pretend. And so sometimes you just have to let them play. It's okay. And that's how you're gonna teach your kids how to be independent, right? Is to just sometimes let them be. You don't have to do everything with them. And if you have done, you know, if you've always done everything with them, it's gonna take a little bit for both of you to step back. But I mean, it's funny because like the other day I posted a picture of Eric with we bought him this like recycling truck. He's so into trash trucks and recycling trucks right now. And he will just play with that truck. I swear if we took away all of his other toys and just left him with the recycling truck, he would be totally okay with that, because he loves it. And it's one of those toys that we can just, you know, let him be. Now, he'll come over and he'll be like, hey, do you want to, you know, can you dump the trash cans with me? And I'll say, sure. And we'll go over and we'll play with him and we'll do that for a little bit. And then he'll go back to playing on his own. So it's really, really cool. Okay. So the next thing I would recommend is that you work in bursts. And I talked about this a little bit, right? Making sure that you take breaks. But I think, you know, they've done research studies on this, that if you work in really focused bursts of like 60 to 90 minutes, and then you take some time to, you know, get up, do something physical, do something fun, the next burst that you do is going to be more productive than if you just tried to work through. And so I know a lot of you, and it took me a long time to break this when I first started my business, you know, but we have this mentality that, you know, productivity equals, you know, butts in seats, right? That you have to have your butt in your seat from 8 or 9 in the morning until 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And if you don't get that time in, then clearly you're not doing. No, that's not how this works. It doesn't matter how much time you sit in a seat if it's not good time, right? If it's not productive time. So I would much rather work for 2 or 3 hours a day and know that I really put my focus in to those hours than to sit at my desk all day and get up and go, I don't even know what I did today, right? So work in bursts. And kids do really well when they work in bursts too. Now their bursts are typically going to be shorter, okay? But, you know, if you can get your kid to focus for 30 minutes and then let them play for 30 minutes and then come back, you know, it's one of the issues, again, that I have with schooling is that we expect kids to sit down for, you know, 7 hours a day, you know, with a couple little breaks here and there. And that's just not how kids work. Right? I mean, that's not how human beings work. And so, you know, if you have the opportunity with your kids home, like allow them to move around on a regular basis, allow them to take breaks. And you can do that, right? You can do that in such a way that they are doing it in a self-directed way, right? Instead of you having to hover over them. Okay. Really, really important when you're working from home, communicate some more. I am a huge fan of telling your customers and your clients how you work, what your hours are, how they can reach out to you, how long it's going to take you to respond to them when they do reach out to you. It's just really, really important. I call it the How I Work document. And it is critically important to setting boundaries and guidelines with your clients, okay? Even inside Ingram Digital Media, you know, we have a team now that works with us, and, you know, we're putting in very clear guidelines. Like, listen, if you need this, you email this person. If you need this, you email this person. If you need something right away, you know, you have to Vox us. or you have to use Slack. And so we really put all of these systems in place to help us figure out, um, basically the rules. Like, what are the rules? Uh, I think a lot of times when we start businesses, we're just so excited to have clients that we don't set any boundaries at all. And it's critically important that those boundaries get put in place. Okay, so I love that. So how do you want to communicate? What hours are you typically working? And if your schedule is kind of erratic, um, you know, I would kind of set you can always say like, hey, being a mom during Corona, it's kind of, my schedule shifts all the time. But if you contact me this way, right, I will get back to you within, 24 hours. If there's something that you need immediate assistance with, um, or an immediate answer on, because I usually don't say immediate assistance, I say immediate answer on, contact me this way. Okay. You can do that as a business owner. You should do that as a business owner. Sometimes we have to think about non-conventional working. So sometimes that means that you're going to work really early in the morning, you're going to work, while your kids nap, or you're going to work after they go to bed. Um, I would much rather work for a couple hours after Eric goes to bed if it means that I can free up time during the day to actually spend with him. And so sometimes you have to say like, okay, what are my like non-negotiables, right? And so like for me, that is like our reading time in the middle of the day. It is very, very rare that I miss that time. I love reading books with him. I love sitting down and, having that cuddle time in the middle of the day just to kind of reconnect, especially because I've usually been working all morning. It's just so great to have that time. And if that means that I have to work, maybe while he's napping on a Saturday, or I've got to work, after he goes to bed, 1 or 2 nights a week, it's completely worth it to have that time together, right? So think about kind of what your non-negotiables are in your schedule, and then schedule everything else around that. And for the love of God, please give yourself some grace. I think often we are so hard on ourselves. We had this really big discussion in our brainstorming session this week. It's one of the weekly calls that we do for Bookkeeper Training School. We actually do 2 weekly calls now. So we always have the Q&A session, and then we have this brainstorming session. And it's just kind of cool because like we're all on Zoom together, like we don't record it. So it's much more casual, I think, and I think people are more willing to open up. And so we're talking about the concept of having, feeling like you have to get it all done right now. And I think I'm probably going to end up having to do a podcast episode on this. If you want that as a podcast episode, reach out to us. Go to askkristen.net. Kristen's with 2 I's, Kristin. Askkristen.net and say, yes, I want, the how do I stop, feeling like I have to get it all done right now episode. And I will move that onto the agenda. But we're so hard on ourselves, and we feel like we have to get everything done right now, absolutely perfectly. Stop. You have to give yourself some grace. You have to give your kids some grace. You have to give the people around you some grace. Imagine if we just all gave each other some more grace, right? The world would be a much better place right now, I think. It is okay, if your house is a little bit messy. If it's a lot messy, right now my house is pretty messy. We have a ton of stuff, so we just bought an RV, and we're picking it up today. I'm so excited. But we've been purchasing stuff for it, and we have stuff everywhere. related to this RV. And I'm like, can we just get the RV so I get all of this stuff out of my house, so that I can actually like clean up my house? But, and things have been really crazy. It's been like the never ending tax season. All my classes at the university went online. So trying to help all my students do that. Bookkeeper training school is going gangbusters. It's going great. And it's like, so there's a lot going on. And sometimes I have to say, no, I can't develop this new thing right now. No, I can't write this new problem for my students right now. We'll have to use one that we've used before, one that's in the book, or, whatever. But it's like we set these unrealistic expectations of what we think we should be doing. It was funny because I was talking to somebody and I'm like, I just feel like, I have to do more and more to try to get my students to re-engage at the university. And my friend was saying, you know what, Kristen, I think the thing that you need to understand is that, your 5 is probably most other people's 12, right? On a scale of 1 to 10. And so if you think you're operating at a 5, you're probably operating at everybody else's 12. And I was like, yeah, you're probably right. Yeah. Okay. But it's like, we don't think of it that way, right? We're thinking of, okay, this is what I expect of myself. And sometimes it's just completely unrealistic what we think we should be doing. Okay. So please give yourself some grace. All right. So just to sum up, real quick, how do you survive working from home? Make sure that you have a workstation set up, and it's helpful if it's movable, right? So that way you can be where your kids are. Divvy up your childcare. Make sure that you have a routine. Sometimes just let your kids play on their own. It's okay. Work in short bursts. Make sure that you get breaks during the day. Your kids get breaks during the day. Burn off that physical energy. Communicate, right? Make sure that you tell your clients and your customers how they can get a hold of you, what the expectations are for them to hear back from you. Work when it makes the most sense for you, whether that's early in the morning while your kids are napping, late at night. Figure out what your non-negotiables are, okay, in your schedule. And please, please, please give yourself some grace. Okay, we are all going to get through this. We're all going to get through this stronger. But stressing yourself out, stressing your kids out, creating fights and arguments, it's not going to help any of this. And so if we can find a way, to create a little bit more harmony in our lives, a little bit more peace for our kids, it's all going to go much better. All right, mamas, thank you so much for listening. I appreciate your reviews. I appreciate you subscribing. I appreciate you sharing our posts when you see them, and telling your friends about the show. It really helps us grow our reach. I have to say, like, our numbers for September have been awesome. So I really want to thank you guys, because you're the ones that are telling other people about the show. So thank you so much for doing that. All right, mamas, I hope you have a great week. Take care of yourselves and take care of each other.
Thank you for listening to Small Biz Mama with Kristen Ingram. If you'd like to learn how to create more margin in your life, please visit us at smallbizmama.com. That's smallbizmama.com.